Greetings and welcome back to another episode of Dispatches from a World Gone Mad. I'm your host, award-winning investigative reporter Greg Schwartz here in beautiful Marin County. With me, as always, is my attorney, Kevin Dean, there in the Valley of the Sun. And we have a special guest tonight. It's my friend, Paige McCormick, who is a staff accountant with a renewable energy company. But Paige and I first met when we worked together on the DC cannabis campaign in 2014 to legalize recreational cannabis in our nation's capital. And we did accomplish getting that on the ballot after collecting the necessary signatures during that summer. And then they passed it. And then what else is happening, Paige?
Well, there's been a lot of new beginning for DC as far as the outlook is concerned with the Democrats taking hold of the House and Senate. So there is some pushback again from Andy Harris, of course. But again, it is a budget writer. It does have to be removed during the budget process, which is not until October, if everybody has their act together.
Are you talking about the psilocybin?
No, I thought we were talking about. Okay, so we're talking about two separate things.
I'm not sure. So what were you just talking about?
I was talking about the pure tax and regulate structure of recreational cannabis in DC.
I thought that was already all good to go. But so
no, they've only Initiative 71, as you know, was only to legalize home-grown, home use.
Ah, yes, okay.
Yes.
I thought that was basically considered a decriminalization measure because there's no commercial operation through that. Is that inaccurate?
That is inaccurate. Yes, it is you're fully compliant by the law. I have friends that have set up grow rooms in their homes, have spent thousands of dollars on refurbishing the electrical grid so they can be compliant. They have the city planners in there making sure everything is good. Yes, you can grow in your home, but as far as this, like I live in Massachusetts, I can go to the dispensary. That's not happening there. So, and the reason it is so is because DC is not a state. It is. It's a district. It's the District of Columbia. They don't have autonomy over their budget. So that is why when you get pushback from Republicans, they go the nasty way. They're going to go for the budget. They do it through the budget committee. So you had this guy, Andy Harris, out of Maryland, that inserted this rider into the budget back in 2014 when we legalized, that said DC couldn't use any funds to tax and regulate. Well, I-71 was written in such a way that you didn't need cash to implement I-71. It was just simply stop arresting people. Doesn't take any money.
And so I'm still not following the narrative here. So what is happening now?
Okay, so now Andy Harris is back at it again. So Mayor Bowser has put out a bill, her version of bill to tax and regulate. Phil Mendelson has put out his version of ready to go. As soon as this rider is pulled, DC is going to be ready to pull the trigger because they've been waiting so long for this.
Pull the trigger on having dispensaries?
Yeah. They've been waiting so long for this right.
It's interesting you use a gun analogy there because possession of guns is really forbidden in DC, right?
Well, it is, yeah.
On federal property in particular.
Well, it's pretty much you can't own a gun in DC, period. They don't sell guns in DC. There are gun permits given out in DC.
Oh, but if you're a right-wing member of Congress, you're allowed to bring them into the Capitol.
Exactly. Building, right? Exactly. Yeah. That's it's ridiculous.
That's interesting about the
world gone mad.
Harris rider, though.
It's a world gone mad.
Because
does not compute.
When you look at the national news on what's going on in DC as relates to cannabis policy, I was just familiar with decriminalization and then legalization of up to a couple of ounces, is it? And you can transfer 1 ounce. And so I wasn't aware that there was an ongoing effort to strip that or just continue to prevent DC from implementing transactional legalization.
So, so the stripping of I-71 will never happen. The stripping of homegrown home use will not happen. Not under the residents' watches. They value that, and it's a very liberal city. And so to take away any right with a new bill is just not going to fly. Not in a city like DC where, it's very liberal. Like, it's just probably like 1% of people live in DC are Republican. It's a very small fraction of people. So yeah, I don't see that happening.
Right, they all live out in the burbs in Virginia and such.
Exactly. Beltway Bandit style, whatever. Yeah.
So I've just been looking a little bit at the existing framework here. Just a question, where do you think the existing, and I think in they call it I-71, the limit of 1 ounce for transfer without remuneration comes from? Because that's something that we see here in Arizona too. We just had legalization passed on our ballot, and we are able to possess up to 1 ounce, and you're able to transfer up to 1 ounce without remuneration, but you're able to grow 6 plants. And so some of us here are concerned about how are you going to be compliant with the possession limit if you're able to grow 6 plants, because we all know that you can produce way more than 1 ounce of flower from 6 plants. But the 1 ounce limit on transfer seems pretty low, and the fact that I'm seeing it in the DC law makes me question, where does this 1 ounce limit come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a great point. So here in Massachusetts, they say, I'm a medical marijuana patient, and I can buy like 6 months worth of supply, and they constitute that 6 months of supply at like 10 ounces. So I think it really depends on how liberal your state is. But as far as for the growing part, yeah, I think that's insane, because how are you going to limit ounces on a plant? So if I have a plant, hey, I'm a great grower. I put a lot of hard-earned time and possibly money into growing this beautiful plant that's like a bush. That's, you know what I mean? It's what, it's like beautiful thing. I can get 2 or 3 pounds off of it. I'm a master grower in my backyard or something like that. And what do you say? What do you mean I can't grow my plant to its fullest potential? So yeah, I think it's a great argument. Like hello, this is a plant. What do you mean you're telling me I can't grow my plant to its fullest potential? So yeah, we have to push back on these things.
The overreach of Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well,
but this, for anybody who is concerned about the Arizona 1 ounce limit, the idea is you can avoid criminal penalty for that by keeping it all in the same room that's designated as your grow room or your production room. I forget the name of the statute now. But the way that they have cultivation room. And so the way they have cultivation defined in the statute, it would include all of your preparation for consumption. It's just that you must keep the cultivation room under lock and key and accessible to anyone who isn't supposed to be in there, particularly minors. And so you would have to just slowly bring out your flower so that you're never possessing more of an ounce of flower intended for consumption, and pretty much label the rest as either in the process of as remaining in the process of cultivation. That's pretty specific, but generally I'm just like, where does this 1 ounce idea come from? In my mind, it comes from, these commercial entities that stand to profit off of legalization, but know that they need to have the support of everyday users who want the ability to cultivate and transfer without remuneration to get these things passed.
Okay. Let's move on to the main hot topic of the week, which is the controversy surrounding New York Governor Mario Cuomo, who was already under fire for his poor handling of the COVID crisis in the nursing homes.
Mario is his dad.
Oh, right.
Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, I thought
Andrew. I was just I was just
What
reading
are
his
you talking
Wikipedia page. That's probably why I mixed those names up. And so now Andrew is also further under fire because now 6 women have come out and accused him of sexual harassment. And we now have the people calling for him to resign, including the woman who is the Democratic majority leader of the New York State Legislature. And so, and Paige, I think you have some particular strong feelings on this matter.
Well, yes, I do. I think that I see a pattern here. There's not one, two, but we have 6 women, and
Right?
they're very detailed accusations, and they seem to have had a lot of pushback from the system when they tried to speak out, and were kind of shuffled along to different positions, or who knows. I mean, we might see more coming out of these stories, but I mean, yeah, when you come across a guy like Cuomo, who's been in power for that long, whose family's been in power for that long, and has so many connections, the guy probably thought he could just get away with anything. Not only that, it's kind of like, I tell you, like, I come from, like, my Nana's 100% Italian, first generation Italian. The Italians are kind of different when it comes to the culture. Like, she's told me, like, and I told her, so Nana, like, what about this Trump, she's like, oh, that's locker room talk. Oh, honey, they say that all the time. That's just how the men are. This is the same woman. It's like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you keep a man around? I mean, it's just a different mentality. I'm telling you, like, this old school Italian New York culture, it's very real. So I think he just kind of like got immersed into that, and he it's not right. Don't tell. I'm not defending it at all.
Well, it certainly seems to go to another level. Like when you had last year, we had Tara Reid, for example, accusing Joe Biden. There you had one person making kind of an accusation that was from decades earlier in an election year. It seemed kind of shady. And there was reason to doubt her story for a number of reasons. But here, you've got 6 women accusing this guy. And we're talking about recent behavior from only a few months ago. And so this really seems to go to another level of what looks to be guilt by, a pattern. Yes.
So I think once is enough, and your characterization of the Tara Reid accusations are pretty in line for liberal naysayers and apologists, and so I think that the what happened with the Biden allegations were enough that he should have dropped out of the race, and I think when we were looking at white men from particularly that generation of people, and I don't know, obviously Biden's a bit older than Cuomo, but we have people of upper class privilege and power using it to harass women is unacceptable. Even once, right? And let alone sexually.
Yes, it is unacceptable even once. There you had a woman
and just because
from even like 25 years earlier. It was the way she was accusing him of something that happened in 1993. All of a sudden, during an election year, I found that a bit shady. As were the holes in her story.
Yeah, the way that the media treated her versus how they treated the Kavanaugh accusation.
These accusations are
completely
way more
disparate.
damning.
We're completely disparate, and I think that the media should treat both sets of accusations the same. I don't think that Kavanaugh should have been confirmed, and I think Biden should have stepped down. And I think Cuomo should step down. I don't think there's any room for saying this happened a long time ago, and therefore it's not important. Just if we have to get rid of an entire generation of male leaders,
that's a mischaracterization. No one was saying it wasn't important. There was reason to believe that Tara Reid's story was flimsy, whereas here there's a lot more
No,
damning.
the reason
damning
why the
evidence.
media treated that account the way that they did, because they had an interest in seeing Biden take the election and kill Bernie's campaign, right? So you can't be a Bernie supporter and at the same time saying that the Tara Reade allegations were bogus and were fabricated to tank.
No, I totally
tank a
disagree with
campaign,
your
right?
assessment
It was
there.
part of the
That's just
same
not
strategy.
true.
It was part of the
No,
same strategy
you're
to
totally
deflate
reaching that.
a
It doesn't have
progressive
anything.
left-wing movement in this country.
No,
It was the same.
no.
It's the same part. And now that you're looking back on it in retrospect, you're saying, oh, it was overblown politics.
No, I said the
no.
same thing last year. I looked into it and thought her story was flimsy, and that it was suspicious that she was all of a sudden coming out. Why didn't she say something in 2008, right?
Because he wasn't running for president in 2008. Everyone knows that the vice president is meaningless, right?
Oh, bullshit. No. Okay, Paige, what do you have to add here?
Well, I want to go back to the Cuomo thing. I
Okay.
think that it's pretty easy to kind of look at Cuomo and say, okay, like maybe we can kind of see how, like, the guy that shows up to the press conference and wearing nipple rings, can make people feel uncomfortable at work. Like, what is going on? Is there sexual harassment?
When did he do that? When did he do that?
In the corporate world, there's like sexual harassment training. Like, you can't show up to work wearing your nipple rings, dude.
What is that incident you're talking about? When not familiar with that.
Apparently, well, I saw it was all over. Stephen Colbert covered it. I mean, it was all over the place. Yeah. He came out of the press conference.
Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for Governor Cuomo here.
I don't care if you have nipple rings. If that's your thing.
But we've seen with these people in power, they'll never resign. He won't resign because he's been in power for too long. And so, they're going to have to remove him or otherwise it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah. Well, the Zephyr Teachout and Cynthia Nixon, either one of them would have been better at the coronavirus, because they're more compassionate people than, just he lied about all this sending those people back to the nursing home. Like,
right.
He was basically sacrificing them. That's what he did. That's not right.
Yes. So yes, things really don't look good there for Mr. Cuomo.
And the one thing that you can say about, a good portion of Democrats anyway, is that they're not willing to look the other way and play the whataboutism, right? So if this were a Republican governor, we would have an entire party of this country, over 50% near 50% of the electorate, saying that a Republican governor should not step down because of sexual harassment. Because what about Bill Clinton? What about Joe Biden? Whataboutism? And I think it's important for Democrats in the state of New York to stand up for something and be consistent, even if it means losing an influential political leader in that state.
Yeah. It's far too much whataboutism. Right wingers are always coming with whataboutism about anytime you try to talk to them about anything. It's what about this? What about that? To try to sort of rationalize how these things are okay. And so this will be a test, I think, for the Democrats, because it really doesn't look good for Mr. Cuomo. And so how you rationalize this, him staying is a tough one for them. And so I think it gets back into class war, though, right? Rich elitists can get away with shit because they have power, they have money, they have connections. And so whether you're a Democrat or a Republican is almost irrelevant. If you're a rich elitist in power, you get a whole lot of carte blanche to act as you will.
Yeah, and then that creates more power. And then because you're like, oh, I have everything else, like, well, I can get sex too, and then sex becomes like that thing that because you have all this other power, you want to get that sexual power too. And wasn't he like divorced from his wife? He had a hot wife.
Well, that's what Trump talks about too. If you're famous, you can get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. So he was kind of out there like, oh, well, see what I get. How many of those bystanders did he actually get away with? They're not coming forward because they like the nipple rings. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm just saying they're out there, you know.
Yeah.
And so Andrew Cuomo's got to go, but we could go through the list of bad governors, and particularly when it looks to the list of bad governors and how they've failed in the response to COVID and have killed people within their states, and we should be making a list of those governors that should go.
Well, yeah, there was an article coming out today showing death rates are higher in red states where Republican governors failed to comply with the recommended measure protocols to fight the virus.
So every one of these Republican governors in red states, like the one I live in Texas, they need to go as well, because they've
I really
people.
sympathize with those of you residing in those god awful red states.
But another big event that happened, I think, since we've talked, or a little bit of update since we've talked, is the stimulus package and becoming law. It was signed a day earlier. Any thoughts on what was included in the stimulus package and the partisan divide on the vote for stimulus?
Well, I mean, we didn't get the minimum wage we want. Joe Manchin, we kind of discussed that last week. Overall,
Joe Manchin, I'm sorry, Joe Manchin, I'm going to interject here. He infiltrated the Democratic Party.
He's not a
Democrat.
Right.
I don't know where
it's a major problem. And so the question is, will Biden let him dictate narratives because he has similar views, or are they going to, I don't know. But overall, it's a pretty decent package overall, even though we didn't get everything we wanted. You still have right wingers complaining that it's giving away too much pork because they don't understand that supporting municipal government is not a partisan issue. So, I mean, you're seeing a lot of articles in the mainstream press really praising this. And so some of them don't dig quite deep enough, but, considering where we are at in this world gone mad here in this foul year of our Lord 2021, it was an overall decent package, I'd say, although I certainly didn't like them cutting unemployment from 400 to 300. That was another bogus Joe Manchin directive. And so, what to do about Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, right? We're kind of in a rock between a rock and a hard place.
And what a president does? A president acts presidential. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I don't see President Biden taking the bully pulpit by the horns, holding press conferences, and making public statements every day, demanding that the Democrats fall in line and warning the American people that if Democrats don't do what Joe Biden says, that the Republicans are going to take back over the control of the government and run the country into the ground. In fact, we haven't seen one single press conference from Joe Biden. And people are saying that this is a right-wing propaganda ploy to complain that the president has gone longer than any other president in modern history without holding a press conference, and longer than any president in modern history without holding a State of the Union address, without any explanation.
And you continue to overlook that we're in a unique situation with the pandemic. So why a senior citizen president would want to be putting himself out there in the public as if all is well is something that you are totally overlooking.
Have you been following sports, Greg, and seeing how they're doing press conferences in sports?
Hello. Those aren't senior citizens.
This program.
Can I chime in here? Chime in here? Okay, he's already had the vaccine. Okay, I think the reason why he's not doing press conferences is because he wants to give this illusion that he's so busy during his first 100 days that, trying to get the, everything in order, whatever. And also,
there's a big mess on his plate.
He's also very much older too. So I don't think he has the stamina for this job yet at this level. He has to kind of get back into it. Like, it's a little bit of a thing,
Why?
So
why is that a big
he did a statement today and he was like, but do you notice, like, I didn't do this on the campaign trail when he was in the campaign trail. He has like onsets of dementia. Okay.
Well, and that's what the right wing folks are saying, right?
Yeah, that's a right wing trope too.
I actually saw him. He stutters, yes, but he does have some things where he forgets. But listen, he is older, but he has surrounded himself with the people that know how to run this country, and that is why we elected him. So
there you go.
He can pass on. Camila can roll on the show, and it will all be fine.
The reason
know?
why we elected him is because we don't live in a democratic society, and we have a Democratic Party that's run by corporate elites that has done everything within its power and over the last 8 years to deprive working class people of a meaningful choice in a general election by sandbagging Bernie Sanders' campaign. Either that or Bernie Sanders is complicit as a sheepdog. Those are
No,
one of those two
dude, take
reasons
that
is
sheepdog
why.
crap and shove it. That's
So
just
if he's not a
bullshit.
sheepdog, Greg,
Dude,
then the
Bernie
latter
has
is the first thing is true.
Bernie has more power than ever before now.
And
so he's wielding that power as budget chairman.
Paige,
he's getting things done. No, things are getting done. Did you notice
Paige
that
made
Arizona,
a powerful
in Nevada,
half concession that we have.
Did you notice that in Nevada, DSA just took over the state party? Your sheepdog crap is just total garbage.
Then if he's not a
yes, they
sheepdog,
sandbagged
Greg,
him. We know they sandbagged him, but this crap attack about the sheepdog thing, it just doesn't fly.
then okay, if he's not a sheepdog, right? Then what Paige is saying, we've elected a someone who is about to suffer or has dementia onset.
No,
right?
see, now you just sound like Alex Jones.
Oh, he's old. I saw him. He was forgetting.
Why did we choose him to be president?
Right-wing tropes.
A country of over 300 million people, and we can't find someone who is competent to be president, who's someone who's old and about to be overcome with dementia.
I agree. They're all too fucking old.
Established insider. You're really not looking at the big picture. You're acting like a very naive turnip who just fell off the turnip truck yesterday.
A naive turnip that we just must ignore the fact that we have a president who is losing quickly his mental competency.
No, that's nonsense. No, that's nonsense.
I'm not even concerned about that.
Yeah, stop with your right-wing propaganda talking points, dude.
It's not right-wing propaganda.
It is.
It's facts. It's reality.
No, it's not facts. It's not facts.
He has dementia.
2 out of 3 of us agree that he's got cognitive issues, and that seems to be why we don't have a press conference, and he's not doing a state of the union.
You're missing the ball here. You're missing the ball. There's a big.
Carrots, he's got the right people around him. I don't give a shit.
It's press conferences. It's about that press conferences don't have much of anything to do with governing, Kevin. So you're missing the ball.
Let me say,
you're just going for like low hanging fruit, and you're not even like getting into policy or anything like that. It's just low hanging fruit, and I think that you can do better.
Saying that press conferences have nothing to do with governing, on ABC News, former press conference Mike McCurry, press secretary for President Bill Clinton, said that formal press conferences are indispensable part of the presidency, he told ABC News. It's not a substitute for a normal press conference to just have the president take a few questions in passing. And so they're saying it's about being held accountable and being questioned as to your policies. And let me be clear. I'm not in any way suggesting I'd rather go back to Trump coming up there and talking and rambling like a moron. And I think that's what Biden's trying to avoid, right? And I think there is a bit of Trump fatigue that we're all very happy to.
Yes, and so why are you so eager to try to keep promoting that narrative?
No, it's the thing is
paradigm.
That the left needs to recognize that we don't have an ally in the White House, and in fact, we
know that. Okay, look, we know that. So what you need to recognize is that we're still having this battle between the real left and the centrists. Okay, the centrists won, but the real left that Bernie and the political revolution represent has more power than ever. We've grown far more. And so we have this tide for political revolution is growing, and so it's not going to happen overnight. And so you need to get the dynamic right. Okay.
I would be happy, Greg, if you never used the term revolution in the world with your not happening overnight, political long-term reform strategy. And what I'm saying
sorry
is,
you don't understand it, since
what I'm
you
saying
think Bernie is a sheepdog because you've totally missed the boat on the political revolution. And the squad, and how we have a stronger progressive left in Congress than we've had in our lifetimes.
The left playing nice and turning a blind eye to Trump, Biden's inability to speak and be held accountable for his presidency is not going to do anything to accomplish the left's goals. In fact, it's empowering Biden to continue what he's been doing. The first 100 days, we've already seen.
So who do
no
you want to
$15
empower? It
minimum
sounds like
wage.
you want to empower the right-wing people who just want to attack every little thing.
It's not left or right. We live in a broader society than just right or left in the sense of what the media is saying. But I'm saying is
everything is really polarized, and you seem to be like kind of oblivious to that, and that there is a larger culture war going on.
There is actually. Can I speak? Because
Sure.
I actually have Trump people in my family, in my intermediate family. I've got anti-vaxxers in my intermediate family, Fox News watching people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so I see this in a more in a different perspective. That's their reality. And that's what they believe. And to try to break bread with someone like that, who you grew up with, who obviously I'm 35 years old. I have my own worldview, but I mean, to understand what those people believe, and say but they just like the same, they just want the same core thing. So if we can just specifically focus on the core values that we all want, and that's why Bernie Sanders was so popular. That's why he was bridging the gap between the conservatives and the liberals. That's why he was the most popular candidate between both. And so if we just carry on that message and we just keep focusing on the issues, we don't have to worry about either party because the issues will win. My entire experience with working on campaigns has been about issues. The issues have always been more popular than the candidates. Initiative 71. More people. I think we actually turned out that's the initiative in DC that legalized home grow, home use of recreational cannabis in DC. We actually turned out more voters, and that was a mayor race as well. So we actually turned out more voters than the previous mayoral race, and people showed up for us because they wanted to vote for cannabis. So people do care about the issues. If you say issue specific, then people will get on your bus. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you continue to fight
on that
between
note,
each other,
I would like to add that before I was being shouted down by Kevin, he's trying to say Bernie is a sheepdog and has no effect. This was proven to the contrary this week when the Nevada Democratic Party was taken over. The whole slate was won by Democratic Socialists of America, who had all supported Bernie. This is a huge victory for the political revolution. And so we're seeing the effect of, and so is, the stimulus package, actually, the money that's going to uplift the poor, that's actually largely coming from Bernie's campaign as well. And so there's a huge influence that Bernie has had on the Democratic Party that people like Kevin seem to completely overlook with their sheepdog narrative.
Paige, I would like to get your opinion.
Well, I wouldn't ostracize Kevin. I wouldn't ostracize Kevin and just call him a sheepdog narrative. I think you have to hear about everyone's side of the story and hear where they're coming from. Because the minute you call him a sheepdog, the last time they're going to listen to your perspective.
No, he's saying Bernie's a sheepdog, and I'm saying that's bullshit. And he keeps bringing it up, and he has no real evidence to support that. And he's overlooking
we've done an entire episode on sheepdog
that Bernie has had on the party, which is quite strong.
And what we've seen over the first 50 days is Joe Manchin getting more press than Joe Biden on what the Democratic Party needs to do in the stimulus package.
Did you expect Joe Biden to come out and govern like Bernie Sanders? Did you really expect that?
I expected Joe Biden to full at least to his promise of $2,000 stimulus checks instead of hiding and never holding a press conference and never conducting a State of the Union address. But moving on to the issues, because that's one area that I'm always talking about is let's focus on the issues as well. And I point, as related to minimum wage, I talked about how I contacted Kirsten Sinema and told her that Republicans support minimum wage increase because we passed it in Arizona and it's through a state initiative. But what do you think about, Paige, the universal background check and the extension of the waiting period to gun reform laws that came out of the House today? Those are two issues that a lot of Democrats seem to care about, but are also extremely divisive and could undermine the ability to get for the Democrats to get other bigger issues done that are probably more impactful for working class people. What do you think about those bills?
Well, I'm not as familiar with the bill that came out today regarding reforms, but I support any kind of gun reform law that the Dems are putting out there because I think that is important. I do believe that we have a right in the right to bear arms, but I believe it needs to be checked, severely checked, and that automatic weapons should be illegal. I'm all for the military having the best artillery, but you should not be allowed to have that in your home, kind of a thing. So I do think that the timing of trying to put a bill like that out there right now may just be false hope for anything getting done, because all the attention now is on the rest of the cabinet confirmations and what they're going to try to do to stop the broader agenda. I think that they're always looking for a way to get gun legislation through, but I think that it never really happens. Deeply down, I don't think the Dems actually want to do anything about gun reform. I think that they talk a big talk, but when it comes down to it, the gun manufacturer lobby make so much money and they donate so much to the corporate Dems that I don't think that anything is actually going to get done about this. I think it's just basically a PR stunt.
So my understanding of the two different bills that have come out of the House, one, they're calling it his name, Dylan Roof fix, because of an extension of the time period you have to wait for a background check from 3 to 10 days, which to me isn't really as objectionable as the idea of this criminalizing the private sale of guns where there is not a background check done. And so they're calling this the universal background check. And so the general criticism is that these commercial entities, when they engage in gun sales, have to do a background check or check a database. And then there's a bunch of exceptions. The big exception that people complain about is the gun sale exception. But what I'm concerned about is criminalizing the personal and private transfer of weapons between people. I think that it's one thing to outlaw the transfer of weapons to felons and other people who are not eligible to possess firearms. I think it's another thing to criminalize the failure of individuals to conduct background checks when transferring weapons. And you said something that was interesting there about supporting.
Well, why do you feel? Oh, I'm sorry. Why do you think that? Why would you not support background checks on the private citizen? So
yeah,
I don't want
why
just anybody on fucking Craigslist
for weapons
transferring. I want a background check. I don't want people transferring weapons on Craigslist. Are you crazy?
So, I grew up in.
I think Kevin's been living out there in the desert for a little too long.
No. So what's the point? No, hold on a second. Right. First of all, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I see people going to prison all the time for possessing a firearm under ridiculous pretenses for being a criminal, for a felony for it to do that. We've taken nearly every aspect of our civil lives and criminalized it, and to the point that we're all criminals. Like Hunter S. Thompson.
You have to have a license for that.
No, you don't need to have a license for that.
That goes back to the 60s, though, when they persecuted the whole counterculture. But
I can't even have a gun because I have a medical marijuana card in the state of Massachusetts. So my sister was trying to give me a handgun, and I said I can't even have it. She's like, "What do you mean you can't have it?" I said, "I have a medical marijuana card in Massachusetts. I've given up my Second Amendment right in the state because I'm basically an invalid because I have a medical marijuana card."
Well, that's bizarre.
Well, there's also a federal.
That's backwards East Coast states for you.
I mean, there's also a federal law that makes it a 5-year prison offense to possess drugs and guns at the same time. And so if you have marijuana and a gun, you're going to prison for 5 years. And I think, should marijuana count on this list of drugs where you can't
Hell
possess a gun?
no.
No, it shouldn't, right? And so I back to this issue of background check versus the purpose of a background check, right? What is the purpose of a background check? The purpose of a background check is to make sure that I don't transfer a gun to someone who should not have a gun. What is the purpose of criminalizing the failure to conduct a background check when I transfer the gun? Should the crime be failing to conduct a background check and transferring the gun? Or should the crime be transferring a gun to someone who is disqualified from possessing it, right? So
I would like to know under what circumstances you think it's so important to be able to transfer these guns. Who is benefiting from these free gun transfers that you want to maintain?
I'm just thinking of just people who are family members and friends and hunting communities, and you're going hunting and they have a shotgun and or a rifle.
I'm sorry.
And they're going hunting,
Sure.
and here's this gun. I'm going to give it to you or sell it to you for $200. And now I know you're not a felon. I know that you're qualified to possess it, but now I am going to become a felon. And then if I become a felon, I won't be able to possess guns because I didn't conduct a background check.
Well, why don't they get their own gun if they need it so bad?
That's just ridiculous.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Can I chime in here? I will chime in here. Okay. My family, I was raised with guns in the house. My brother, my dad going to the shooting range. Okay. I shot guns, BB guns, whatever growing up. Big gun family, right? Okay. So, I hear where you're coming from. Okay. I personally would not feel safe with some of the people. You never know. You don't know. I've met some crazy ass people in my life. Okay. And sometimes you think you know people, but then you don't, right? And they end up being, because I know this. I've been in abusive relationships.
You know that
I live with guys that beat the shit out of me. Okay, so I don't think that this is good. So I think that you really need to understand the background checks are necessary. You think you know somebody, but you don't. All right, that's all I'm going to say.
Good point. Good point, Paige. And so I think, Kevin, your concern is for being able to transfer a gun to your family member for hunting or something, and to preserve that, you would do away with these background checks that could allow people to just buy guns and give them to, people who really shouldn't have.
Here's what I would do.
Right?
You hear what I would do? If we're going to have background checks, and we're going to have private sale background checks, and so it would apply to gun sales, it would apply to commercial transactions between entities that are quasi-commercial in nature, but I would have exceptions for personal transfers between non-commercial entities and non-business transactions, but you could still have the purpose of the law, right? Criminalizing transfer to people who are unqualified or who are disqualified to possess weapons. And so
how are you going to regulate that?
What would be the prudent situation?
How are you going to regulate something like that?
How are you going to regulate
what is the
under the
exception
same
that
way?
you're going
Do
to
the
allow
same
for?
thing. Only instead of criminalizing the failure to conduct
statute, right? It's a statute.
Yeah.
The statute. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Statutes. Yes. And instead of criminalizing
the
failure
exactly.
to
And
the test, we're talking about the transfer.
Yeah, that should be a criminal. That should be criminalized. Yeah, you should be criminalized. If you transfer a gun, you sell a gun without the proper background check, you should be criminalized.
I agree. I just don't. I think that, Kevin, you're way too concerned about family hunting. And it's almost time for us to wrap up this episode.
And let me connect that there, right? Because what we have here, and it's something else that we had here, is we're okay with big government surveillance into every part of our lives. Constitutional rights be damned, and it's okay if the military is militarized out all the way out, the biggest guns they can get. See, I don't think that we should be encouraging
that's why I want to defund the police,
and I don't think that we should be encouraging surveillance police states in any capacity. And I think that the background check, as it's written now, will push that. And even if I'm completely discarded, in my view, as someone coming from a rural background that identifies left, is discounted. There are a significant number of people in this country that is the number one reason why they vote, and it's the number one reason why they vote Republicans, and it's the number one reason why they will vote against all of the other issues that the left is trying to get passed. And it makes no sense for me to see the Democrats prioritize this issue when we don't have minimum wage increase passed, where we have an affordable housing crisis going on, and we're on the cusp of an entire climatic disaster where the entire world's about to become uninhabitable. We're talking about passing a background check out of the House that has no chance of even getting through the Senate. So to me,
it sounds like there's not been enough recent mass shootings for you, Kevin, because
you're overthinking things.
Were disturbing
yeah,
number
exactly.
Of them
yeah, there were a lot
regime.
of and we had to get a hold of this gun thing. Yeah, if the world's going to shit, then we don't want guns, more guns out there. We want less guns. Duh.
Right? Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Okay.
I want to see.
This has been a lively.
I want to see more
lively discussion.
People of color with guns, and I want to see a resurgence of armed insurrectionary revolutionaries feeding people
like the
in the
Black
streets,
Panthers.
like the
yes,
Black Panthers.
I mean,
that's what I want to see with guns.
Yeah, I love the Black Panthers, and I recommend everyone see
violence.
Judas and the Black Messiah.
Protection.
It's an excellent movie, and we need to
we
need to crack down on the government and their COINTELPRO operations, and we know they're still doing that in one form or another. And so we should certainly heed the lessons of the Black Panthers. But having more people walking around armed, I'm not sure whether that's really the answer. Gosh, I think that's going to have to be a topic for another episode because we're just about at the end of our time. Paige, was there something else you wanted to add on that dynamic of men taking advantage of women and such?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's a cultural shift that we're experiencing. So we've been, living in a patriarchal society, and we're kind of shifting now, I think, believe into a more matriarchal society. And this is kind of what it looks like, and you'll see the shift where women are finally kind of coming out going, I was wrong, or, I mean, you see this kind of happening a lot. And I didn't think that anything like any kind of abuse I ever experienced was ever going to happen to me. I was always like, never me, I'm a strong, independent woman. And then, there it was, it can happen to you. And it's still, it's a man's, it's a man's world gotten mad out there. So just, keep it real, ladies, and keep your head up. And, change is coming soon. We're at the precipice of the dawning of a new age where the phoenix is rising.
Oh, yes, I like that. Change is coming soon. I believe our favorite band, Phish, sings about that too. And gosh, there's been, I guess that's the last thing we should talk about. People are starting to speculate, when will Phish come back? Because Trey was hinting, I don't know. I certainly don't see a West Coast tour happening this summer. I don't think that's going to happen. And so the question is, states are reopening too soon, right? Maryland is going to go 100% open, just like Texas, which is crazy. I think they're both going to have surges, and they're both going to realize they made a mistake. And so we shouldn't be asking our favorite band to rush into large arena concerts. I don't think that's going to be happening anytime too soon. I think we should all temper our expectations there. Although ultimately, I would like to see them hold a festival event at a large site that can accommodate everyone for the comeback. I think that's what should happen, although whether that could be feasible before next spring of 2022, I don't know.
That would be, yeah. We're looking at 2022 for something like that, yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that happen to you, Paige, and I do hope that we are shifting into the era of the divine feminine, and out of this toxic 13,000-year cycle of overly aggressive masculine perspectives on the world. And perhaps that's what is fueling the idea of a political revolution, and maybe it could be coming upon us quicker than the slow reform model that Greg's proposing.
It's not a slow reform model when you have AOC in the squad having a much stronger progressive wing of the party than we've ever had before. And Nevada now is ruled by Democratic socialists. And so we're seeing a shift here. And I guess this is going to probably wind up being an ongoing topic. And so I'll look forward to discussing it further, because I believe that the political revolution is still winning. I know it's not fast enough for people like yourself, but we have to realize that we're taking on deeply entrenched institutional forces here. And so they're not just going to give up the game overnight. But I think we're making progress, and there's reason to be optimistic about that, despite the still centrist control of society in general. And so, I think there's reason for optimism.
Back to Phish, though. When are we expecting an announcement from the band as to whether or not we're going to get anything this summer?
We're not expecting an announcement anytime soon. They will hold out as long as they possibly
As
can,
long as they
which is
can, yeah.
reasonable, just like they did last year. They'll hold out, especially because the venues, they don't want to have to postpone again and offer people refunds again. So yeah, you're not going to get an official announcement until, May, maybe. And so we'll see how things go. But the fact is that you're not going to get the whole country vaccinated in time to have a summer tour, I don't think.
I don't know.
And yeah,
Not the
so
way things are
just,
looking.
Well, I mean,
right, that's just
President
not realistic.
Biden announced today that he's going to require states to make the vaccine available to every adult by May 1st. And if tour doesn't start till
Pipe
July,
dream.
I mean,
Yeah,
and-
right. See,
No,
right,
available on a pre-register list. That's what he said today.
Right.
He's walking back every chance he gets.
Having something
all
technically
bullshit.
available and actually getting it done are two different
Two
things.
different things.
If
Yeah.
venues
We're
get a
not-
system
hold
in
on.
place where in order to attend, you have to show your vaccine passport, it's quite possible that we're seeing live music this summer. Where only,
Well, I think you're going to see
only
some
the
socially
vaccinated
distanced.
are able to appear.
I think you're going to see some socially distanced live
vaccinated
music,
getting
but
shows, and it's fine with me. I'm all for that because they deserve it. Because they're if like the medical workers, the frontline workers, yeah, I'm so glad. If Phish just said I'm doing a show for medical workers, I would be totally fine with that.
I don't think that's going to happen either. But it's an interesting concept.
I like it.
Yeah.
The rest of us sit
All right,
home. We
well,
really.
Gosh, Paige, you've got a lot of good ideas. Maybe we'll have to have you back again in the not too distant future. I'm certainly glad you could join us this time around, especially because it's been too long since I've seen your smiling face. I mean, really, since Phish Dicks 2014, right? I think the last time I saw you. So we'll have to do this again more often. All right, that's it. Subscribe to our channel, YouTube Dispatches from a World Gone Mad. Like, subscribe, send it to your friends. Comment, tell us what you liked, what you like to hear, what comments you agreed with, what comments you didn't like, what topics you'd like to see us discuss. Bring your comments on the page, and we'll see you next time on Dispatches from a World Gone Mad.